My piece over the weekend was taking sub-Saharan Africa's economic temperature. Last week, the IMF released the World Economic Outlook, and the World Bank released its 16th edition of Africa's Pulse. Both reports are important thermometers for taking the continent's temperature. Sub-Saharan Africa grew just 1.3% in 2016, which was the lowest rate of GDP expansion for 2 decades. And just about everyone was scanning the horizon looking for a more muscular rebound. The IMF is forecasting a GDP expansion rate of 2.7% in 2017, around a full percentage point below that for the whole world, and less than half the 1999-2008 average of 5.6%. World Bank is predicting an SSA expansion of 2.4%. The World Bank said regional per capita output growth is forecast to be negative for the second consecutive year, while investment growth remains low and productivity growth is falling. What the World Bank is saying that the average African is going to be worse off, notwithstanding the plus 2.4% expansion. There is a famous refrain that reverberates across the continent: "You cannot eat GDP," and indeed for 2 years now our cake baking has not kept up with population growth, giving more oxygen to that refrain. As we all know, Africa is not a country, it's a continent, and to properly understand the situation we need to deconstruct the GDP number. South Africa and Nigeria make up half of sub-Saharan African GDP, and have been a significant headwind of late. South Africa, which experienced a bumper harvest because of better rainfall, the southern part of the continent had optimal rainfall in fact, has emerged from 2 successive quarters of negative growth. Nigeria exited a 5-quarter recession and is expected to post a positive number of around 0.8% this year. Neither of the 2 biggest economies' rebounds are muscular, but they're currently no longer contracting. Bloomberg View carried an interesting article about agriculture last week and noted that agriculture still accounts for a quarter of GDP in sub-Saharan Africa and as much as 2/3 of employment in sub-Saharan Africa. In fact, agricultural growth has the biggest impact on non-farm income and reducing poverty. Bloomberg View also noted that small plot farmers account for 90% of all farms in sub-Saharan Africa. When the farm economy does well, food prices stay under control and we see much better economic diffusion. The African Development Bank's President Adesina is making a big push in this space, and it's not difficult to see why. Both economic updates show Ethiopia, even with its state of emergency, is the fastest growing in Africa, with the IMF forecasting a 9% GDP expansion for 2016-2017. Ghana is also outperforming with expectations of a 6.3% expansion this year. When you set aside the 3 largest sub-Saharan African economies, South Africa, Nigeria, and Angola, SSA's aggregate growth rate for this year rises from 2.5% to almost 4%, says Brookings. This is faster than the 3.5% rate at which the global economy is currently growing. In fact, 5 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. And over the next 5 years, around half of all sub-Saharan African economies will expand at an average rate similar to or higher than that which prevailed during the Africa Rising heyday. The IMF is predicting that Kenya will expand 5% this year and 5.5% next year. Politics has taken a very big bite out of Kenya's economy this year. That forecast is surely hostage to how the next few weeks play out. The real economy needs a political guillotine on October the 26th, in my view.